Happy WNBA Monday, Callie Finn. And we got to just get into it. We have to talk about the WNBA All-Stars. And, last week, you and we were catching up on so much in the news cycle. So we were talking Las Vegas and trades, but the All-Star starters were announced last week. Okay. But yesterday, the full list, including the reserves, came out. So we know the whole team and what everything is going to be looking like, right? And so I'll just give like a little, preview to everyone of like what that full list looks like. This is the entire WNBA All-Star team for the 2025 WNBA All-Star Game. So we have the starters and we have the reserves, right? Okay. So far so good, right? One would think.
Right.
One would think, but always with any all-star game, there's always a little bit of like, oh, this person was snubbed and, all the things. So, like, let's just talk about the starters because I think there's actually a lot to unpack. So, why don't we just go ahead and start with the starters? So, of course, I don't think it was a surprise to many that Caitlyn Clark was named as a starter. And not only that, but she was named as the captain, right?
Yeah.
I mean, look at 1,293. No, I'm sorry, 1,000. Good Lord. 1,293,526 votes. She was the top vote getter for All Star. And the reason that matters, just to clarify for everyone, the way that the All-Star starters are selected is by a formula. And so it's 50% fan vote, which Caitlyn Clark received the top votes. And so she got that in her favor. She won that as a guard. It is 25% media voting. And also it is 25% players who vote, right? And so that's how we get to how you determine who's going to be an all-star. But in this instance, right, like there was a little bit of controversy around Caitlyn Clark, which I wouldn't have necessarily expected, but there was this year. And so, Tarika and we spent some time actually talking about it last week because ultimately where I landed is that Caitlyn Clark should be an all-star this year. And I think the dispute was really around whether she should be starting or not starting. So I want to ask you, Callie, do you believe that in terms of Caitlyn Clark and being an all-star or starting, is there any part of that do you think that we didn't get right, or do you think that this is the way it should be?
I mean, I think I understand the dispute, right? She's had injury struggles. She's not been super available. And then also in some of her games, even though she's, points wise and assist wise, she's very productive. Her turnovers and things like that maybe have not been the most efficient. So I would understand why some people would argue, okay, she should be reserved, but whatever the case may be. However, just as a media voter, I know you're in the same shoes. It kind of comes down to like, you're making the list at a certain time, you get a blank ballot and you're thinking about a lot of things, right? Like it's like one, and I think one of those factors that maybe a lot of people don't consider, it's one that I consider is like, who do people want to see? You know what I mean? It's an all-star game. Like that's the whole point of it, and like, I know everybody knows like Caitlyn Clark is somebody that people want to see, you know what I mean? Like that's why she got, it wasn't just like the most all-star votes. It was the most all-star votes in WNBA history. So that's like really significant. And obviously they're hosting, there are all these different factors. And I understand maybe like the frustration because it's like, okay, well, she took away a starting spot from someone else, but it's like, who would you have in her place? Which is something that, we could definitely talk about, but like it's interesting. I think the selection process also for the reserves is completely different. The coaches select those players and that could have gone either way. So if people would have been upset either way, I think.
Yeah, and I guess we'll go there now since you said that, but I do think that Skylar Diggins should have been a starter in my opinion. Now she still ended up being a reserve and she's an all-star this year, but I do think Skylar Diggins should have been a starter. So when I look at like, the starters here,
yeah.
This is the starters pool. And so you're saying of the guards here, is there anyone who Skylar should be starting over? So
Yeah.
in my opinion, I think that Alicia Gray and Sabrina are locks, in my opinion. Now, some people might argue, like, well, why Sabrina? Because I will say this about most of the guards this year: there's a lot of variance in their season for most of
Yeah.
them. I would say Paige and Alicia and Skylar. No, I'm sorry. Paige and Alicia, I think, have probably been the most consistent. But even Paige started off a little slow. So I would say, like, from the beginning of the season till now, like, yeah, there might have been like a couple of like games where like you didn't get Leisha's normal production, but she's been pretty consistent most of the season. There's been some inconsistencies and variance, I think, with some of the other guards. So, like, I'm not really compelled by like somebody, Sabrina had like a little slump where she wasn't shooting that well. So, but I think that I'm a very big believer in rewarding winning. And so when people, talk about, oh, it's an individual award, I'm not a believer in a team that's like has 6 wins and is at the bottom of the rankings having multiple all-stars. I don't believe in that, because how can you have so many all-stars and this is where your team is? It's not a logical conclusion to me. So the Liberty, at the time when the media started voting, the Liberty, in my opinion, warranted having more than one all-star. And so to me, their all-stars would have probably been like Stewie, Sabrina, and Jonquel Jones had she not got hurt. But Jonquel Jones got hurt. So for me, I'm not taking away, like, Sabrina is staying there. So to me, she's a lock. And like I said, I think Alicia Gray are locks, right? So then now it comes down to the rest of the guards. And I think there's 3 guards competing for 2 spots. So, with that said, I'm fine with any of them who made it, but I do believe, based on her production, some people have been saying Skylar is, the best point guard this season, or playing like it in terms of like everything. And I think that's a valid argument to make, right? And so again, like, we're talking about how your season is this year. I think a lot of people just get caught up in like, oh, this person's a better player. They could, like, we're talking about the season that you were displaying this year. And this year, Skylar has had an amazing season. But so has Paige Bueckers, and so has Caitlyn Clark, based on the 9 games she played. So I said last week that I thought, like, I do think the 9 games argument is valid, in terms of like, if you're saying like she shouldn't start because she's only played, half of her team's games. That to me is a valid argument. I always think games played is a valid argument. What I don't think is valid is the notion at all that she shouldn't be an all-star. Like, I think she meets the production requirements, and her team has they don't win at the same rate. Well, I shouldn't say that this year, because they were sort of a 500 team while she was playing. But at the point that she went out in the season, at that point, they had a losing record without her, and they might still. So it's like, she matters to that team. And so that's not what happened. Like you mentioned, the votes matter. It's something for the fans, and the fans have spoken, and they said they want to see Caitlyn Clark in the game. The other thing too that I think people have to always take into account is when the voting process begins, right? And so when the media started voting, when that voting period began, she was still playing. It was later in the voting period that she re-injured herself. So depending on when you put in votes, like, you may have already voted for her. You can't go back and change votes. And so, like, to me, this is not this big like thing that people made it out to be. But for whatever reason, Caitlyn Clark, I don't think her personality is all that polarizing, but she as a player is a very like polarizing topic. And so I think people were like doing a little bit too much, in my opinion. But she is going to start. And I think, like, in Indiana, like, you want to see Caitlyn Clark starting in an all-star game. So Skylar Diggins ultimately made it. But as a guard, she's probably the only person that I would have put above, like, that I would argue, like, if, and who would I take away? I don't know. Like I said, it's between Paige and Caitlyn, and there's pros and cons to both of them. But I think I think there were 5 guards who deserved a starter spot, and there were only 4 spots. And so that's sort of like my reasoning.
Yeah. I mean, I totally see it. I think I mean, no, and here's the thing about all-star nods is that this is something that these players think about. It matters to them. There's like bonuses that they get by being all-stars and things like that. And by being, I think even the difference between a starter and a reserve. So it is important. It's important that we get it right. Like it's important that the media get it right. I think Skylar Diggins has, like you said, been huge. You know, like her three-point shooting. She's the leading scorer, but also the leading distributor for the Storm. Like, and she's taken this team that, you know, people maybe wondered what it would look like after Jewel Lloyd's departure and all these different things. And like they are a consistent threat because of her. And a lot of it is, I mean, yes, she is a really great player on the court, but I think a lot of it is like maybe her leadership, even like some of the stuff that you see her like doing and like just being so engaged on the sideline during timeouts and huddles and stuff like that. Like it's all important. She 100% like, and nobody is questioning whether Skylar Diggins deserves to be an all-star. Like you said, the conversation is really whether or not she deserves to be a starter. And you can make the argument for you just did.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Sorry to monopolize so much time. I do want to shout out though, Callie. I don't know for you if there was like anyone who like really stood out to you, but like I think it is just so huge that, you know, Paige Bueckers became an all-star in her first year as a rookie. She's
Yeah.
just having a tremendous season. And you know, what you can speak about Paige because I spent a lot of time speaking about starters.
I mean, no, do your thing. I don't have notes prepped for Paige. I mean, I agree. Like as a rookie, this is huge. Like for and it's not just her. Like obviously we'll talk about Sonia Citron and Kiki Uriafin, but like this is a testament to the strength of this rookie class. Like Paige is doing really, really cool stuff. I mean, you talk about like you just look at the way that she travels through the league and the way that each coach that she faces talks about her basketball IQ being through the roof. You like see it on the court. That's what really stands out to me about Paige. Like she's such a smart rookie. So for her to be headlining this really impressive and kind of like surprising rookie class, I think it's huge. I mean, for me, if I was going to be doing like a shout out, it'd be Asia Wilson because I cover the Aces. And like we were just talking the other day about how like, you know, this is her seventh all-star nod in 8 years. And like it's kind of just like, okay, whatever, like it's expected. But I mean, she's still playing at like like an MVP caliber on a team that's been kind of struggling. So that's one that like stands out to me where it's like one you wouldn't really talk about that much. But the same goes for like Nafisa Collier. You know what I mean? It's like you like anticipate these things. You're like, yeah, of course you're an all-star, but like they're doing really great stuff. So to me, those are the ones that like really stand out. Obviously, Paige is one of them, but like looking at these players who everybody's like, yeah, of course they're an all-star. I would hate to like disregard them.
For sure. And I like you're right. In fairness, we sort of overlook the players that we expect to make it, but it's because they put on greatness every night. And so I like to kind of call out the people that's like, it's not really a surprise because Paige is great, but to do it as a rookie, to be a starter in her first year, and to actually truly be having one of the best seasons of the guards, a truly efficient season, I think it's noteworthy. I also want to give a shout out to Alicia Gray because
Yes.
this is a career year for her. She's been player of the month twice, consecutive month. So shout out to
Yeah.
her. Now she was named as an all-star starter and she was so excited about it. Like when she was named that, you know, 3-time all-star, but this time a starter. I think she tweeted something like that. So I think, you know, she's so deserving. And like I said, it's a career year for Leash. So I want to just give Alicia Gray some flowers.
Yeah. No, I love like her reaction too. Like I wish we could like roll the tape because I saw her being interviewed about being an all-star starter and her reaction was just like so wholesome. So I'm glad that she's like having this season and we can all kind of appreciate. I remember earlier in this year I was like, what are we like making the case for awards wise for Alicia Gray? And I feel like you could probably still make that like MVP case maybe. But when we talk later maybe about snubs, it does get interesting with the Dream considering I don't know who didn't make it. So
For
I don't
sure.
know.
Well, tune in with us guys for part 2 because we're going to get into the reserves and a deeper conversation around whether or not there were any all-star snubs. But look, if you're tuned in right now, make sure you continue to tune in to the WNBA on NBC and subscribe to our YouTube channel, WNBA on NBC. Callie, thanks for joining me today. Appreciate you as always.